Man, yeah, just wear the beanie. That's it.
That's pretty solid. I feel good about that. That's a good way to start this. Get the attitude up high, you know.
Good trade 2 J's if you could become Wolverine.
Where are you getting all this information?
I definitely heard some rumors about it. Are you still going? I get goosebumps thinking about it because it's like you can hear them get.
The car, I was going to qualify and I was going to drive that out the racetrack.
Just threw the hood over the ditch and
longest employee of knots.
You did some digging there, huh?
Look, I want to know right in the comments right now if you're coming to one of the events. If you are, drop a comment and let me know if you use the promo code FD Podcast to checkout, save you a couple of dollars. Oh, no, drive the comments up. You guys don't comment enough. I don't know if you knew this, but I'm in there all the time. And if I start seeing all these, that's only good for me. Makes the FD, the higher ups, the grand poobahs happy when you use FD Podcast at checkout. They're a little happy. I mean, they're not making as much money, but they're fine with it because they know you guys actually listen. And you do the things that I ask you to do. So if you're buying a ticket, take a couple seconds, FD Podcast at checkout, save a couple bucks. And at the end of the year, they go, hey, you sold a ticket. So see you guys out there. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Outerzone, the official podcast of Formula Drift. My name is Jacob Gettins, and we have Zandara Kennedy or Zeee Kennedy or Zed Kennedy. I don't know which one we go with. We're both in Canada right now. So
I sort of have a line about that, which is Zed's dead. I've always gone by Zeee. I just think it's better. So, yeah. Is
it just like is there confusion around like how isn't I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Is that what the issue is?
Well, my name is Zandara, and I've had nicknames as a kid, but ultimately, when I started working in film, I might be working with 200 new people a day, and I have a tolerance of about 2 to 3 mispronunciations before I realized that Zeee was more efficient. It's really hard to mess up, and then I could just hear my name clearly, and I know that someone is looking for me specifically. So that's sort of why it started.
Yeah, I guess on a large set, having a very specific call out is probably pretty key to not missing, situations or conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure the nickname game is very strong on set as it is in like motorsports and everything else.
It is, and they're really similar fields in a way, in the sense that like it's a very intense working environment, and therefore the bonding is extreme, right? The level of camaraderie is really high.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've been on like a couple of like college sets, but like nothing obviously high production, but it does remind me a lot of professional drifting in the way that it's like a lot of uptime, a lot of downtime, but when you're on, you have to be on perfect. And then it's like, okay, cool. Now we're just going to ice you for the next 2 or 3 hours. And then we're going to call you back and you have to be perfect right off the bat. Like no warm up. Here you go. Just do this exactly how you're supposed to immediately.
Yeah, you've nailed a part of it that I hadn't even really realized, because there is that real fluctuation in like, how do you manage your own nervousness or whatever's happening? I might have a wire gag at 11 p.m., but I get to set at 2 p.m. And then we might do the rehearsal then. And they're like, go do stuff. And then you're standing there getting a line hooked up to you. 5 people are touching your costume, your face, whatever. Someone's having a casual conversation and you're going, yeah, I really hope the landing doesn't suck.
Yeah, it's got to be a weird mindset too, just having a lot of strangers that are professionals and you hope they're professionals, around you, as you said, just like hands-on, because that's what has to happen in a lot of cases. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, cool, we're going to hang you off this thing or put you in this incredibly dangerous situation. Hope it goes well.
To be fair, within the stunt department and the stunt riggers, it's a very close community, and there is a huge element of trust to it, which is why it takes so long for people to get established in it.
That I guess that's fair. I mean, same thing going back to motorsports. Like it's big, but it's not that big. Mm-hmm. Like I talk about all the time. I mean, PRI is like one of my favorites because you'll see, especially in the marketing world, you'll see people just move around from company to company, and it's kind of funny to be like, oh, you're over there now. Like same guy, same tactics. You want to take you out for the same meals, but they're wearing a different shirt this weekend.
Yeah, I think that's something I really didn't realize. I mean, being in film for as long as I have been, that feels really small to me. But coming into motorsport, which was really only 2 years ago that I went to my first SEMA, my first PRI, and it's tiny. It really is a tiny community.
Yeah, it's very tight-knit, and it very much is a who you know or who you've met or who you've dealt with previously. And I think that's such a blessing and a curse because, like, once you can get established, like, knowing who the players are and how to navigate it becomes very easy. But also, before you get established, it's very difficult to break in. And then your name is kind of everything. Like your reputation carries so much weight in this industry.
I kind of like that, to be honest. I mean, if people get in early and they don't understand and then they treat the wrong person poorly, I don't mind that follows a person. I think we show our true natures before we know what we can get from people.
I think that's a solid point. Because I know of and I've dealt with people who are really young in their motorsports career that pissed off a lot of people. And some of them have been able to redeem themselves, but some people, unfortunately, are kind of just blackballed. Where it's like, no, like this is how you acted early on when you should be grateful for every opportunity. Why would I give you an opportunity again?
I mean, it's funny you say that. I have the exact same attitude when it comes to stunts, right? If someone reveals a small inability to have judgment in a situation where they aren't discreet or they're bragging about something they shouldn't, or they're just not being careful, why would I entrust that person with safety? Right? Why would I give that person an opportunity to really make a mistake that could hurt somebody or cost the production a ton of money? I feel like those character traits are revealing anyway.
I think the same thing when it comes to job interviews. Like I remember when I was younger, I was like, I don't understand the point of a job interview. Anybody can like bullshit their way through it or whatever. And then as I got to the point where I was interviewing people, I realized that any small, I'm trying to think of like not mistake, but like negative part about that person will only continue to get worse from that point on. Like if you can't put it away for a 1 hour interview, I cannot expect it to be any better if you're a full-time employee. Like if you're, this sounds really bad, but like if you're not 5 minutes early, you're more than likely going to be late for everything I need you for. Like that's just how it is. Maybe I want people to prove me wrong, but every experience I've had of somebody late to an interview or not significantly early to an interview has been late for work or for meetings or for projects continuously afterwards.
Well, it does reveal a larger attitude. We have a saying that is, if you're 15 minutes early, you're late on set, because everything is scheduled. My call time might be 12:06. It's scheduled in 6-minute increments because they plan their day accordingly. And every delay costs so many hundreds of thousands of dollars when you're talking about a massive production that it is a respect of time. It is an understanding of the bigger picture and the impact of your own actions. So I think you are correct on that.
I hope so. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess I've had some people that have impressed me later on, but I do carry a lot of weight in that initial contact with people, just because, as you said, like what you're showing me now is what it's going to be like when I have something that you want, or you want to work with me or do something like that. So it's always interesting that first meet to judge somebody, and I can only imagine it's like that to the nth degree when somebody's safety is on the line.
Definitely.
But yeah, I mean, getting into the stunt stuff, obviously people, I think I assumed they're already aware of what you do or what you have done previously. Can you give me like the top level rundown on what it is that you do for a living? Kind of? I don't know.
So I've been in stunts for almost 2 decades. I started out doing physical stunts, fire stunts. I got into driving really early as a way to train and just prepare myself. I don't come from a stunt family, so I basically used the resumes of the top stunt women as checklists of how do I gain the skills. And stunt driving, I took a class really early and I fell in love and it became something that I pursued. But for many years, what I did was physical stunts. So getting thrown across the room, getting lit on fire, doing fight scenes, just getting the shit kicked out of you. Can I say that here?
You've already did it, so we're good.
I've done it. So as I moved up through stunts, I started doing more stunt driving. I also started doing more stunt coordinating. So right before I decided to go on the road towards FD, I was coordinating full-time on a network TV show. I've had an opportunity to do car chases and fire burns for some of the productions that people have definitely heard of. My resume is pretty long. And
can check the IMDb.
You can. People are always like, what do I know you from? I'm like, oh, you probably have never seen my face on camera, but you've seen a piece of me doing something.
Just legs or something flying by.
Yeah, that's always the most heartbreaking part of doing stunts is you will literally eat shit over and over and over again. And then you're like waiting, you wait and you wait. And finally the movie comes out and you're like, oh, that's my toe. Or they cut it or, whatever.
Yeah.
And now it's a lot more accessible with streaming. But before it used to be like a movie in theaters or on TV and people would like try to record them. It was a whole thing. So I wanted to be better at stunts. I wanted to be a better stunt driver. I started taking classes. At some point, some stunt guy that I knew was like, you should take a drift class. And I took that and that ruined my life. But here we are.
Yeah. It's I like how everybody kind of puts that, like, ruins my life. I sold my BMW last night, and the guy's just getting back into drifting, and he's like, I'm sorry for being your drug dealer, man. He's like, I get it, it's fine. He's like, I relapsed real hard. He's like, I went to an event, relapsed. Now I'm back into it. And I'm like, yeah. Sorry for your wallet.
It's really funny. I was super like frustrated when I was testing a couple months ago, and I made a video just saying, like, drifting ruined my life. Don't do it. Don't have the opportunity. And it's funny because all the people that have been in it for longer than like 3 years think it's funny and accurate. But there's all these new people who are like, you're just doing it wrong and you don't know. And drifting is amazing. And I always have the best time. And it's like, oh, just you wait,
Yeah. It definitely, those really hard times though, I think are what make it worth it, like 2 months later. Like once the wounds heal of whatever that ridiculous situation is, it's like it becomes funny again. You can laugh about it. And like there's a lot of camaraderie that comes around it. But in the moment, yeah, it's pretty terrible.
Well, also just I think that's why the community is so intimate and welcoming and supportive in a way, because we've all been through it. Everything that I've been through, building a team and going through these car things, I've talked to other people and they're like, oh yeah, yep, I went through that. I mean, this is just it's a really demanding sport. I think that you have to be a little bit not right in the head to want to be involved with it in any capacity. And when it comes to crew, I mean, as drivers, yeah, is driving maybe 5% of what we get to do? Like, actually, yes, but we get to drive. And then we have all these people supporting us for way less money than they're worth if we're able to pay them, because they love it and they don't get to drive the cars, So it's really a special breed of person that gets involved in this at all. And I think that we have to have some kind of a love of the struggle or a love of getting through the struggle. Even that part is addictive, right? To be in that high pressure, to have to get things done, to, how many people have swapped engines overnight at FD or built new engines or like the kind of things that we bring cars back from. It's incredibly rewarding too, I think.
Well, and you celebrate those small victories like you dominated the world, right? Like just getting that engine back in or repairing that part, you're at the end of it, you're like, oh my God, I could take on anything now. And it's just like all you did was, put a new subframe in a car. But because it feels like the world's about to end, right? Like we have to do this thing in order for us to move forward. And then once it's completed, you're like, oh my God, we're incredible. Like it's such a high to be on the other side of that.
I mean, it's so empowering in general. Like, so I didn't grow up, my family's not into cars. The anecdote I always give is like my dad takes his car to the shop to get the battery changed, right? That's the level of mechanical ability that I grew up with. And I didn't want to fix cars. I didn't want to repair cars. When I started training more seriously and I worked with Taka for a long time, I would break my stuff and he was like, okay, well, you can't afford to pay me to fix it. So it's only 8 bolts. And it was so frustrating at first. And then it was like, oh, right, everything really can be reduced to it is only 8 bolts. And one of those bolts might take you 3 hours because it's seized and you're like, something is going to go wrong. But the number of problems that would have ended my day before, like, oh, I bent a tie rod, I guess I'm going to go home and take it to the shop or whatever. And now it's like, okay, we'll be down for like 10, 15 minutes while we swap this part at most. That's really empowering. So.
I like that it's only 8 bolts because I've said that to people. They're like, oh, have you changed engines before? That's got to be like, I'm like, it's not that bad. I'm like, it's really, you just, you do this, the engine's out. Like, it's not that bad. But, asked me when I was 17 and I would have been like, yeah, there's no way I could ever change an engine. Like I could never do any of that. But boiling down a problem to its simplest form makes it a lot more manageable.
And I think cars specifically are this thing that unless you're raised with them, they really feel like mysterious and impossible, right? Like it's voodoo and someone else needs to fix it. And when you really start getting hands-on, like I sort of draw the line at understanding how engines are built. Like I know there's a lot of precision. Like I understand the components, but I haven't done engine building or wiring specifically. Like I wired my van when I had that, but I mean 12 volt is not that hard if you're just adding accessories, and not as much can go wrong.
Same thing. I'm not I built one engine, but I was heavily supervised during that process.
It's on my list. It's just it's a very long list, and it's nowhere near the top. So, but yeah, I mean, being able to do all that and knowing so much now about how it works, it seems like I don't know, when you get into it, you just want to drive the car, right? You don't want to fix the car. You don't want to have to deal with car being broken. Like that sucks. But once you get into it, you realize it's all a part of it. You know, when I went back to Willow Springs in 2022, I basically got my FD license, decided, okay, I've been working through all of COVID, 80-hour weeks. Like I'm dying emotionally. And I was going to go on vacation, but I only made it as far as Willow Springs. And I was under the car fixing it and like, oh, I'm actually happy to be here. Like this feels, these problems are so tangible and in front of you. And you know, doing the mental work of solving them is interesting, but also it's linear and it can be completed. So I actually really love that.
Yeah, there's something about not being able to solve a car issue in particular. And then I'm notorious for getting up at like 1 or 2 in the morning because I've thought about, like I've dreamed about it or I've thought about it and be like, I know how to fix this problem, and just go out to the garage. Like there are multiple occasions where I'm walking out to the garage in my boxers to like I think I know why this thing is broken, and I'm underneath the car, and my wife's like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, I need to get this out of my head. I need to understand if this is the fix. If it's not, I'll come back to bed. If it is, I might put on all my clothes and actually fix this thing. Like it's such a great feeling when you finally figure it out.
Yeah, and it's so cool. I mean, for me, yes, figuring those things out on my own is cool, but it's also really cool, like, to work with crew and have your crew go home and like you're exhausted from a weekend and you get a message and it's like, I know what we have to do. Like, dude, have you been thinking about this for 12 more hours? Yes. And this is the solution. You know, there's this bonding element of, again, group problem solving. Like drifting is not a solo sport. It's not possible to do alone. And it really is the cars and the cars not behaving perfectly that I think brings us together.
Yeah, it is an everlasting pursuit of perfection that no one will ever meet, right? Like it's almost exponential. The closer we feel like we're getting to perfection, like we're getting closer, but it'll never get there, right? We've had perfect runs, but even still, like, was it a perfect weekend? Was it a perfect season? Was it a perfect career? Like, I that's why I always look at, you know, somebody like James Dean, who's been so dominant, and I'm like, how do you just keep forging ahead? Like, you've done it. You beat the game, man. Like, that's it. You've won life. But you talk to him and he's like, well, I could have done this. I could have, you know, had a perfect season. And it's like, oh, this is never going to end for you.
Do you think, I mean, I don't know James very well, but I would guess he's probably not someone that's wired for satisfaction. Like I've had people ask me that question, like, oh my God, are you happy? And I'm like, I don't think I'm wired for that. Like, I think whatever it is, the pleasure is almost in the striving, right? It's in the goal. And when you get to the goal, you just move the goalposts because people who are wired like that want to be chasing something.
That's a really interesting take. I can't speak to him directly. I have a feeling you're onto something with that. I know for me, that's definitely the case. Yeah. Because the conversation I have, people like, oh, you must be so excited for whatever thing has come up. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's cool. But like, this is what I'm going to go for next. And they're like, really? Like, I'm like, no, I'm going to focus. I'm going to be really good at the thing I'm doing now. Don't worry. But if I'm not focused, if I don't have a reason why I'm getting better at that thing, because I need to have something next. Like I'll never get better at something if there's not the next step directly in front of me. I'll just be like, cool, I'm good enough at this and I'll find something else to do now.
Yeah, I mean, I think drifting for me, I think that's why it hooked me. You know, I got into stunts and I said, oh, like I don't think I'll ever coordinate. I ended up coordinating pretty early in my career or at a young age anyway. And I felt like I just kept, okay, these are way past the goals that I even had for myself. What's next? What's next? What's next? And I thought I was a good driver when I started drifting, and I was good at the specific kind of driving that I did. But then I realized how good I wasn't, or what good actually looked like. And I mean, I sort of had the benefit, I guess, in a way, of Willow Springs being where I would go to drift. So you would see the Oties and the Mats and the Roams and go, oh, okay. No, I can't do that. Or, I mean, that's the thing that's really interesting about this sport. Like, if you watch racing, it's kind of hard to tell if you don't have maybe a drone view. You can't really tell necessarily how fast a car is, right? If you watch drifting, like, it is so rare that I watch a video of myself drifting and I'm like, rad, that looks good.
Yeah.
It might feel good inside the car, but outside you're like, oh, I could have transitioned faster. The car's not making any smoke. Like, it just looks slow, and there's so much more to achieve, but you have to kind of do it and watch and do it and watch and do it and watch. And I mean, that is the way you grow, but it also forces you to be so honest with yourself.
Yeah, it's so hard to go back and have to critique yourself. Like, it's such an ego hit, but it's anybody who's great at what they do, like, that's, you talk to them, they're like, yeah, I go back and I watch myself and I hate what I see and I fix it. And it's like, that's very self-destructive, but also that's why you're great. So there's the trade-off.
Yeah, I mean, it's awful. And I've mentioned Taka a couple times. I've worked with Taka since the beginning. And, originally I told him I didn't want to compete. Then I told him I never wanted to run FD. Then I got a license and abandoned all of those things. But, for the first, I think, 4 years that I worked with Taka, one time he said, do you want me to tell you that you're good for a girl? Because I can tell you that. And I think he knew exactly what button he was pressing, because it made me furious. But for 4 years, one time he told my brother that I hadn't embarrassed him that weekend, and I rode that high for quite a long time. But for me, knowing that you have someone in your life that is never going to lie to you about how well you did means that I'll work really hard for that praise, but B, I know I'm getting an honest appraisal. And when I do a good job and he says I do a good job, or Yoshi says, nope, you're close enough, that's exactly what they mean, and it has created, or perhaps reinforced, this condition of, like, just striving to be better or to be good enough. But I do think that's how you grow, and it is not painless.
Yeah. I also think that's a really good sign, or a sign of a really good teacher, is understanding how to motivate a student. Because there are people who need constant praise to get better, and there are some people who need the pursuit of praise to get better. And, like, sometimes you have to add some negativity behind it to push them to that point. Yeah. But understanding how somebody grows is how you need to teach. So obviously he's identified, like, okay, if I give her a carrot every once in a while, that'll work a lot better than if I'm just constantly just leaving little bits to move forward. So it's a good sign.
It is. And I mean, ultimately, if you don't think someone's capable of something, you don't push them in that way, right? I know that for me, right. I'm the same. I push people to go where I think they're capable of, whether or not they think they are. I'm not going to say that's good enough for you if I know that you could be great.
I'm sure that's a interesting place to be, especially on the stunt side of things, because it's like, hey, I mean, I don't know if this is actually like a case, but it's like, okay, we could start you halfway down the stairs and still get the shot, but we could start you at the top of the stairs and the shot's going to be way better. And it's like, I know you know how to roll out of this. It's going to be fine. You'll be all right. And having to push people into those situations.
That's a really generous interpretation. I would say that the job is really twofold as a coordinator, because when it comes to actors, yes, my job is to keep them safe, make sure they're feeling safe, and also get the most action out of them that they're capable of, because the actor's face on camera doing the action is what we want, right? They are the story. With stunt people, it is a little bit different. You call and you say, this is the job that we have. This is what it looks like. This is what I'm going to do to mitigate those risks. And yes or no, basically. And we do what we can to set people up. And we do what we can to basically direct their performance, ask for certain things, tell them what we're looking for. But there is sort of an expectation that you show up able to do the job. Unless it's a special case where you've had to hire someone that you know is new and you're putting them in a position that they're not experienced with. A lot of the burden is on the performer to come ready to perform. But also, you know, that it's this culture that used to be quite toxic that is evolving where, you know, someone of my generation and earlier, we would never tell anyone that we got hurt. You know, I've hidden injuries from, I destroyed my ankle on a show, like dropped onto it from 8 feet, bad landing going through a window and basically rolled out of it, completed the shot and then waited till no one was looking and was like going from object to object and like up to my boss. And he was like, okay, so they want to go again. And I was like, we can, but that might be me for this season, you know? And then no one else on the crew knew I was hurt. I put a brace on, I iced it. I did what I had to do to show up and do a fight 2 days later that involved like me jumping into the sequence. But there's this element, and I don't know how much of it is really, you know, self-imposed. It's not that easy to replace a stunt person, especially if it's a stunt double for someone. So we do work through injuries, you know, and I know people who, for instance, broke their arm or leg on a first take of something, but went back, did 3 more takes, like it was a wire gag or something, and then went to the hospital, and then they were denied benefits because the insurance company said, well, you went back to work. Well, they made sure that the day didn't get lost because calling someone else in to get processed, to get in the costume, to do all of that stuff, especially if they're a specific look, that costs the production money. And ultimately we have this idea that we just need to get the shot at whatever personal expense.
Yeah, that's a weird form of like toxic trait where it's like, I'm going to completely ruin myself, which I mean, it's hard because it's almost accepted doing stunts that you're going to get hurt. Yeah. That's such a weird line. I can understand why that took a very long time to overcome. And I'm assuming it still isn't in a good place.
It definitely has changed. I mean, there's a much larger part. Like before, stunt coordinating was a lot more like plan the cool stunts, hire the people. Now it's a lot of safety paperwork. Now it's a lot of explaining to the studio's insurance company what measures we took to make it safe. You know, it is telling your performer, hey, you do have the right to say no. Even though, like, for me, I would really struggle with I've definitely said yes to jobs because I needed to prove that I could do them, not because I was like, you know what I want to do is get clotheslined off a dirt bike over and over and over again in a morning, you know? But there's an element of having to prove to someone else or to yourself that you can do the job. But now it comes to like reporting injuries, and the big one is TBI, right? The big one is concussions, and we're seeing the effects of that. You know, there have been lots of studies over the years, especially in football players, but stunt people are a big one too, because even it's not just like hitting your head or hitting the ground or a wall with such force that your brain gets rattled. We do countless head cells, right? Like every punch is a fake and you are shaking your brain over and over and over again. So people will actually get concussions from doing too many head cells in a day. And you know, the person with the brain injury is not the person who should be deciding whether or not they have a brain injury. They usually don't have great judgment in that moment.
Yeah. Well, and then I think it kind of creates a bigger risk too, because some of those people who now have had years of head injuries get into coordination, and then you have to start to question some judgment calls, and you're like, whoa, like, would you have put yourself in this situation? Like, oh no, it's fine. It's like, you've taken a lot of hits over the years, man. I don't know about this. Like, that's, I mean, maybe I'm reaching a little bit on that, but that would be my concern with it is like, oh, now you're a coordinator after you've had 15, 20 concussions that at least we know of.
There's definitely an old school, new school mentality to it, you know, and back in the day, you had to be tough and you had to be lucky, and you still have to be lucky like that. I don't know how to explain this, but there are people that are like cats, you know, where there's this incredible scene in, I want to say Sum of All Fears, but it might not be that movie. It was a movie that was shot in Montreal, and there was a sequence where there's 3 cars all doing a cannon at the same time. And there's a guy on a bike who also lays down the bike in that sequence. And no joke, like I've talked to the guy who was in one of the cars, and as it was flipping, he saw the guy on the bike in his windshield. Like his car flipped right over the guy that's just sliding down the road, can't do anything about it. And magically, that guy was buried in the gap between the hood and the windshield and 100% fine. If 1 foot in either direction, he would have been killed or, maimed seriously. And there's so many things like that happen on sets where we also get lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I do question things like that. Like, do we have so much luck in our lives? Like, not that I'm really like within that path of like understanding that. I'm trying to like think of the best way to put it, but like, I do think we have a certain amount of like tokens of luck. And some people use them up really early, and some people only have one, and some people have like an infinite amount, and you just don't know. But there are definitely people out there who are more lucky. But I mean, is that preparedness meets opportunity? Is that somebody who is prepared, knew instinctually, I need to put my foot down to slow down, like I see the gap that I'm going to land in? Like, I don't know, but there's something to it for sure.
That's a great question. And if you know how to get more tokens, I could really use some. Like I was not enjoying you saying that they're finite, because it's certainly recently I've been questioning whether I have any more luck tokens coming my way.
Yeah. I mean, you've had a rough 2 years?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely been character building. I've had a lot of opportunities for growth. And a lot of opportunities to really distill down to what's essential. You've
had some time to think about how to place this conversation, because I mean, it's been a rough go. I mean, I think that's the best way to put it. I don't know if there's like a point where you go, oh, this is where my luck has been going down. I think maybe the van crash is probably a really early indication, and it's kind of been rough since.
Oh, I mean. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of 2023, end of January, when my Zeee caught fire and burned for 12 minutes and then tried to drive itself away while on fire. That was a good time too. No, it's been pretty consistent. And I mean, I am definitely an all-in kind of person. And I really did kind of just throw everything I had at this decision I made to go into Formula Drift. And the cost is high. It's a difficult thing to do. It takes a lot of elements. It's hard to learn all in 1 year. I had spent the year before FD doing that. Like, I toured the US. I did like 20,000 miles and a ton of drift events because I didn't think I was ready for FD, and I was 100% right about that. But it's all struggle, right? But you do kind of just get used to like, oh, okay, that happened. All right. Like yesterday morning, I got a message from. I have a G35 that stays at my friend's place in LA, and they messaged me at like 3 a.m. and were like, so your car got broken into, and also we need to move it because, the parking people put a sticker on it and they're going to tow it. But we also just looked inside and there's no steering wheel. So, and I couldn't find it in myself to get like upset about it. I was like, oh, okay, well, this is just a thing to deal with. So character.
Yeah. I in those situations, it's easy to say outside of it, but I always just try to resolve the situation immediately and then have emotions about it later. Because getting emotional about it immediately is not going to fix the problem. Mm-mm. Sometimes it is still necessary to have feelings about it right away, but very rarely does it help.
I'm going to agree with you on that. And I think that having that pragmatic mindset of like, okay, I actually like having a problem to solve, which maybe is what I need to look into. But the mode of, okay, this is now something that I just need to break into. What is the solution? That's something you can work with, right? There's action that can be taken about it. And I would much prefer to have that kind of problem than the kind of problem where there's nothing to be done about it.
Yeah, there is something freeing about being in a situation that you can't control, but you have to put yourself in that mindset. Like it's a shit situation, right? But if there is, admittedly, there is something freeing of like, there is nothing I can do about this. I'm on this roller coaster.
Yeah.
I just have to wait until it stops. And that's it. Like, I mean, it's similar to like crashing a car, right? You can't stop what's going on when the car is crashing. You got to hold on to the restraints and just be like, okay, when it stops rolling, I'm going to check the damage and then we'll go from there. And that's all I can do.
Yeah, it's actually such a good example. I had a situation recently where I was doing a pipe ramp with a vehicle, and yes, in the lead up as you're going off the ramp until the car is in the air, there's a lot of things you need to be doing. The second that car is in the air, like you have one job, and that's like keep your limbs in and wait and listen and you're like you're upside down, sliding, listening to the sounds, going, oh, am I going into the ditch? Where am I headed? Am I going to hit the, But until that moment, you just stay safe. And then as soon as you stop moving, it's like, okay, right, I have things to do again. I got to let everyone know that I'm conscious, I'm good, I'm going to get myself out of here. And yeah, there's a real skill in knowing which moments are the moments of I have to do all these things to make things work, and which moments are the moments you just have to go along for the ride or go with the flow.
Yeah, I think the hardest ones are when it's the mix, when it's like, I have to make a decision about what's going to happen next. I'm waiting and hoping there's more information or a situation's going to change. But at some point, I've just got to pull the pin and be like, okay, this is what we're doing. And not know what direction. Like that's what my life has been like for the last several weeks. So I feel very in tune with some of your situations where I'm like, I don't know what I'm like. I mean, right now, my house is on the market. I have an open house, like literally after we're done recording. I don't know when I can move to Florida. I don't know how much money I'm going to have to move to Florida. It's in somebody else's hands, but I'll have to make a decision at some point to pick an offer coming in our house. And then the rest of my life is dependent on that offer. But until that situation happens, I'm along for the ride.
Yeah, and there's an interesting element. I mean, I don't know that everyone loves this about me, but I was already spontaneous, but I've become a person that makes decisions really last minute because I rarely have all the information. And if I make a plan even 2 weeks out, something's going to change, and if I try to stick to that plan, I'm actually going against the most logical option when all of the pieces fall into place, So there is definitely this element of patience, which is not something that I'm naturally gifted with. And, just letting it happen and just being open to possibilities presenting themselves. And in my case, I will say a lot of people have shown up, in ways that I wasn't expecting, and therefore opportunities as well. So I'm sure that you will make the right decision when it's time.
I'm going to make a decision, and I won't know if it's right for potentially years. So we'll see. I mean, that's what I've kind of sequestered my brain into. It's like, okay, you'll make the call and you'll live with the decision, and you're going to make a bunch of other decisions afterwards that are either going to make that situation better or worse. Yeah. And you just don't know. It's taken me a very long time to get to this mindset, because I've not been like this my whole life. I've been, my early 20s is like an anxiety mess, but like it unfortunately, it takes some really, really nasty situations to happen to realize like, oh, I can't control this, so I'm just gonna do what I have to do to get by. And that's sometimes that's what has to happen. It's like I don't wish some of those situations upon anybody, but like I came out of it and I'm like, oh, I've got a completely different mindset on life now. Like now I can deal with things this way.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the bargaining phase where I'm like, I feel I've learned what I needed to learn. Like I feel I've built the character. I feel I've learned the lessons. Now I'm ready for the things to work.
So we're through denial and anger. Now we're into bargaining. Yes. Acceptance is coming very soon.
Yes.
I don't think I'm fully into acceptance yet. I still got one foot in bargaining, but yeah, I'll tell you, once you cross that threshold, things get a little bit better. Sometimes you're going to flip back and forth through those stages anyways. The spontaneous nature. I mean, I feel like that has helped you develop and do a lot of really, really interesting things. Stuff like skeleton luging. Like, what a weird situation to be in, to be like, oh, I'm going to do 97 kilometers an hour down an icy hill by myself, and I've never done this before.
Okay, I'm super impressed now.
Thank you.
So yeah, there was a brief period in time where I guess they were short on people for the skeleton team, so they decided to offer these like experienced skeleton experiences. And this is like, Jacob, this is seriously impressive, because the car I had at the time was a 1992 Toyota Corolla that I'd bought off of a commercial that I worked on. Okay. And I found out that this was a thing, and I signed up, and like same day drove from Vancouver to Whistler in my Corolla to go do this skeleton experience. And yeah, they just strap you in and are like, okay, you get on this. Well, actually, there are no straps, but they kind of put you through like, okay, you just lie here. So you get on it and you're like, okay, face down, right? Which is not the way you want to go through a fast course at all. And they're like, okay, don't move, don't lift your head. And you're like, okay. So you're basically facing the ice, going at the top speed, going, I really hope that this is normal. And, it does all the banks and everything. And they put you in, like, not at the very top of the track, but something like a third of the way down. So you can't go maximum speed. But I think their goal was to recruit people because apparently rugby players are the perfect skeleton people. They have they have the best power to weight ratio because they need a good sprint, right? And
yeah.
And anyway, I did try it. It was terrifying, but I did not feel like I was doing anything particular in terms of controlling it. But yeah, if there's an opportunity to try something, I really want to try it, and that was one of those examples.
Why not, right? I think I feel like being a stunt person is very much like being a Swiss Army knife, where it's like the more things I can pack into the Swiss Army knife, the more things I can do later on. So it's something like that where it's like, oh, if a contract comes up, like, oh, we need a luger, you're like, oh, I got this. And like, really? I'm like, yep, I did it. I got the thing, right? Like,
yes.
Like, why not?
No, I definitely felt because I didn't have people like banging down my door to give me work. I felt like I really had to earn it. And so I did try to develop a lot of skills, rigging, rappelling, freediving, all of those things are things that I just was genuinely curious about. And I do love the phase of developing skills. I love that dopamine. I love just learning in general. And yeah, I wanted to be as prepared as possible for as many things as possible. Would I have taken a skeleton job? No, I would have been definitely not the right person for it. Just, you want someone who can handle the worst case scenario, not the ideal scenario. And I think that's the important piece that as a young stunt person, you think, oh, well, I've done it once. And no, like as a coordinator, when I'm hiring someone, if the person needs to do a backflip, I don't want the guy who can like pretty much do a backflip 90% of the time. I want the guy who can pretty much do like a standing double back or double full or something where they're not working at the edge of their capacity, if that makes sense.
You want somebody who like not that they can't fail, but like they don't know how to fail, right? Like where you're so good at something where it's just inherent and you're like, oh, like you don't have to think about doing a backflip. You just did it and that's it.
Yeah, it needs to be like going to the fridge to grab a piece of, like not every stunt is like that. A lot of stunts are definitely, okay, I'm pretty sure I can do this, but they're not, you don't want the person who's just going to do their best and hope for the best.
Yeah, you need somebody, well, it's like, it's like having like a tour guide. I don't want a tour guide who knows the area. I want a tour guide that's like lived there, that knows every pass. Yeah. So if there's a crazy monsoon or something, like, oh, he knows where to go. I don't want that person to be figuring it out while I'm there.
Correct.
Like that's not the situation I want to be in.
But the counter to that is as stunt people, we get really good at acting like it's not our first time. But
I was going to say the fake it till you make it, I feel like is very inherent in that industry.
Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, even if you have a skill set, it's rare that, a specific thing has been done before. I've gotten to, let's say, drive cars up ski hills. It was my first time because they don't usually let you do that. In fact, they arrest you for doing that. Or, there's certain things like that where I had to dive into the harbor, like swim underwater and then climb up onto a boat using the mooring line, which, by the way, isn't under tension because the boat is in the water. No, I hadn't had a chance to do something like that before, but you just go, okay, we figure out the elements as we go. And I think there is a part of it that's like, we need to instill confidence in the people around us.
Yeah. I think having a little bit of like that bullheadedness going into it, like makes everybody else feel better, even though internally you're like, oh shit, like here we go. But what is it, like the duck on water, right? Where it looks cool and calm, but underneath is just flapping and flailing underneath the water.
That's a super accurate analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. I could see that. That's fake it till you make it. It'll get you into a lot of places, but it'll get you into a lot of trouble if you get caught.
And, there's some things that you will never know how to do the first time, so some of it is just going, I probably can figure this out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So on the, like the stunt side of things, have you ever thought about like just doing something specifically for you? Like, I mean, I know you've created content before. The bunny hunt video had me absolutely in stitches.
Oh.
I would love to see more stuff like that, especially getting in like more drifting.
Yeah, it's funny. There's one video that I think I managed to get off the internet. You found bunny hunters, but I made a music video with a friend when I was in Montreal, when I was like 24 years old, to a French rap guy called Let Me Be Your Stuntman. And we did this like, stunt driving video with a rental car that I then took back and was like, I don't know, it's making all these sounds. We had totally flat spotted the tires, and so they gave me like a credit towards my next rental. But
perfect.
Yeah, there are usually, I want to tell somebody else's story. Like I think I'm so used to telling other people's stories. I get really excited about it. So opportunities to do that through marketing a specific product or something like that. Yes. Would I love to make my own car chases? Absolutely. They require a lot of budget. Mm-hmm. But that's a good question. Like doing a stunt just for me. I have had jobs that were kind of like that so I worked on Blood and Treasure, which is this CBS TV show. And it was like just checking down the list of stunts I'd always wanted to do. I got to like rappel down a bunch of stories in an evening gown. I got to do bike chases. I got to do car chases. Every week was like, oh, what do I get to do now? And it was like being an action hero, because it was. And, but yeah, I've never thought about like, what is the stunt that I want to do aside from what is the type of show I want to do? Yes, I want to do a car chase in a Bond movie, 100%. I don't even care what the details are, Oh,
that's cool. Yeah.
I actually love being asked to realize someone else's vision, because it forces me to have to do something specific, not work within, oh, I know that I can do this and this is fun. Early on, yes, we used to do all kinds of projects, but sometimes other people can think up things that are outside of what you would imagine because they don't know what isn't possible.
Mm. I would have figured with your love of dogs and motorcycles that the Virgin commercial where you stunt double the dog on a 10-seater motorcycle would have been high up there. I figured that would have been like, that's it. End of my career. Dog, motorcycle, I'm done. Like, that's it.
I mean, yeah, I think all the dogs were CG in that. But riding that 10-seater motorcycle was that was a challenge. That thing was heavy and awkward, and yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, that's. I think those like unique situations are really what make up the career. I'm sure you can go back and like a lot of them start to blend together, especially with some of the head hits and stair falls and things like that. But those standout moments, I'm sure, are kind of what you go back to from time to time. You're like, I did that thing. I can't believe I did that thing.
Yeah, for me, the high is definitely the kind of stunt where it's all on me, and the potential consequences high, I guess. I did one for a Guillermo del Toro movie where I was getting thrown over a railing. I have to hit my back on a railing and then keep flipping, and it's like 3 stories basically, and then she collapses on the ground, and they wanted it all in one take. And I had picks on my hips and like something to slow me down, but it only worked if I controlled my angle of fall, if that makes sense. Because if I didn't, I was going to just break my neck. It was going to slow me down here. So, the whole day, that was all we shot, was me doing that thing. I don't get to look behind me when I get thrown, and I knew I was capable of it. But there's always that element of like, what if I make a mistake? So those days when you finish them, you achieve the thing, everyone is happy, and you're walking home, that's an incredible feeling. There's this weird, I often have a moment with the really hard stunts where I am like standing there and it is way too late to change your mind, right? Nor would I ever, but I'm standing there going, man, do I regret all the decisions I made that put me in this position right now? But then the after is worth it, So it is a weird cycle.
Hey, if you're watching this on video, look at the screen right now. Yeah, a little different, right? What do we think? If you're on audio, it's time to head over to YouTube and take a look because I'm not going to tell you what's going on here. But thoughts, maybe? I don't know. Leave a comment. But you can't get this yet unless, maybe we get a whole bunch of people that ask for it. But what you can get, one of these. You can get your very own Teal Toque. Head over to shopfd.com. Use podcast24 at checkout. Save yourself 20%. Like I said, these aren't available yet, but I'm thinking about it. What do we, I talked about bringing back bucket hats, but maybe? I don't know. Yeah, all you audio people, head over to YouTube. You'll see what I'm talking about. I'm sure the injury list is pretty long. I will say a very severely broken arm in 2012 looked nasty. That required a fair bit of plate, I assume. What is the list? Like, have you kept track of everything, or is there just like the top 3 or 4 where you're like, that was a really bad one?
Yeah, I mean, so I've over the years, and not all of these were at work. I've dislocated my elbows something like 11 times, give or take. That arm break was really bad. I actually sprained my AC joint at the same time, but it wasn't diagnosed until later. Even though I was like, I can't lift this arm. And they were like, don't worry about that. Your other arm is a problem. But actually a really fun story about that is I broke my arm. I'm in set going, I think I can go again. And they're like, don't think so. Your arm is an S. But one of my really good friends and mentors, he comes over and he's not like, are you okay? He's like, where's your phone? And he immediately starts taking video. Like, that's why I have pictures. Because
right.
You're going to want this later. That is like very typical stunt people. Mostly that, a lot of soft tissue stuff. I've been pretty lucky. I have fairly lax ligaments, which means that I usually don't break things. But yeah, I think it's just the cumulative abuse over the years. But I also, before I did stunts, I did gymnastics and trampoline. So I also had a ton of injuries there.
Yeah, almost made it into Cirque. I know you spent a bit of time like behind the scenes and tried to get in there. That would have been the dream, I assume.
Well, it's kind of interesting. That's definitely what I dreamed about growing up. My family moved at a period of time where, like, I moved when I was 13 from Ottawa to BC, and that was the time when I had been doing circus really intensely, and I never really got past that point. Like I did circus shows when I was young, the club that I trained at, like I did contortion and hand balancing, and I loved being the kid in the air and at the top of the pyramid. But I think I would actually not have enjoyed a life in Cirque. I knew many people that ended up there, and it is an office job, basically. You do the same thing twice a day, every day for years with the same 300 people, and you don't control anything about your life. What I loved about film is that every day is different. I don't have a high tolerance for routine. So yeah, I'm super happy that it went this way. I got a motorcycle license. I was a motorcycle courier, and then I met a person that worked in film, and that's how I got into film. But stunts has all of the elements of circus, of the physical challenge, of the trusting of the people around you, of the tight knit community. But it's different all the time, and that's what I enjoy the most.
Was that Richard Simpson that got you in originally?
Is this whole podcast just Jacob shows off his ability to do research and pull up things from your past? How many times have you been accused of this?
Well, it's definitely a little self-celebratory at times, but there's a divide in the audience of fans where some people are like, I really like that you do all this work. And there's some people like, these are inside references that only the guest gets, and it does nothing for the show. And I'm like, both points are 100% correct. Without like divulging too much, a lot of it is like to build respect from the guest, where it's like, I want to prove that I did my work.
Yep.
And oftentimes after presenting some of these fun things, like you mentioning Richard in one interview podcast that you did years ago, that allows the guests to be like, holy shit. And they open up significantly more. I really wasn't worried about it with you because you and I've hung out a fair bit over the last year or so. But it's also a pride thing. I want to show that I work my ass off. So,
well, that's impressive. Yeah. No, Richard is actually a really good friend of mine. And I met him because I was parking, like I had 3 motorcycles in my parking spot because I was working as a courier. The 2 people I was living with also had bikes, and he just left a note because he wanted to put his bike in our spot also. And he's a production designer in commercials and in movies as well. And basically my friends were like, well, she's in America doing this like rigging thing. And basically he needed people to sit in the rafters of a studio for 3 days and throw paper for this commercial for this dumb kid's, like this kid's pen that like records things. And so he just needed people
I remember those.
Yeah, it was, I can't remember what it was called, but anyway, we listened to that Yeah song, but just the first 15 seconds of it for 3 days straight in the rafters. It was probably about 40 degrees Celsius up there. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. And that's how I met him, basically. He needed the right thing at the time. I started working with him. I had met a couple of stunt people. But yeah, my path was not try to get into stunts. My path was art department, grip, electric, a ton of background work while training all the time, and then eventually getting my opportunities.
I think doing all the background work probably helps a ton. I mean, I say this to drivers too. Like if you're trying to get into FD, like go crew for a team. Like spend a year crewing for a team. It'll make you a better driver. You'll understand the logistics of it. You'll understand the back end of it. You understand like where drivers meetings are, don't piss off Andy Luck. Like learn all of those back end things before you show up, and then you have to worry about it.
I literally put a photo of Andy in the group chat. And I'm like, don't make this man angry. Just whatever he says, you do it. Don't make him mad. If you make him mad, you're going to make me mad.
Yeah.
But no, any amount of time you can spend in the environment that you want to be in with no spotlight on you or no pressure on you is so important. Background are meant to be forgettable, right? No one knows that you're there. But if you just listen in any environment, you can learn so much about how that environment operates, how the people who are doing well in that environment operate, what the steps are, how things happen sequentially. And my whole career was built on being able to see the big picture and anticipate what was needed next so that I was handing it to people as they were asking for it. And you just expand that upwards and upwards and upwards. And eventually you are the person asking for the things because you see the whole picture. Even as a stunt coordinator, my job is to anticipate the needs of the actors, the needs of the director, the needs of the other departments. There's a ton of collaboration. And so understanding those elements is really key.
That point is something I've tried to get across to people, especially like back in the kitchen days, because it was like, I should never have to ask you for things. When I turn around, they should be sitting there in front of me. And if I worked with somebody in a kitchen who was good at that, oh my God, it would go flawlessly because it was that anticipation. It's like you become almost like symbiotic with the person you're working with. And then the day is over and you're like, did we just do that? And you're like, yeah, everything went phenomenal. Like I didn't have to think about anything. I didn't have to ask you for anything. Everything went well. And that alone, if people can learn how to do that, no matter what you're doing in life, that is so crucial and will get you, it'll take you so far. Just anticipate what people need.
That skill you can take anywhere and will make you an asset. Literally anywhere. Even outside of FD, I work on my car a little bit more. At FD, I try not to. But when the shit hits the fan, if I can't be under the car, I'm going to be the guy passing you the things you need next and figuring out what's happening next because I know that's how things get done the most smoothly and the fastest. Like if you have to ask for it, you're adding at least 15 seconds every time you're asking for something. So
those small moments add up to a lot of time at the end of the day.
Yeah, and ultimately, a person can have as much training and as much knowledge, but if they can't see the big picture or anticipate, they're actually not really an asset. In the same regard, like I would take the less trained person that at the beginning of the weekend goes, I looked in all the drawers, I know where everything is, what is that called? What is that called? What is that called? Well, that person is going to be jumping ahead to do the next step.
Yeah. There's nothing worse than like having that feeling like, I'll just go get it myself. Like it's not even worth my time to explain how to do this or where it is. Like, don't even worry about it. Find something else to do. I hate having to make that decision, but sometimes it's the one you have to make.
Yes, I've definitely made that one also.
Yeah. So you're obviously back in Canada right now. We mentioned that kind of at the top of the show. Can you tell me the best type of poutine to eat before getting in a VR sim?
The best type of poutine to eat before getting in a VR sim would be no poutine. No type of poutine.
What a strange call to make. Like
I was hungry. I was in Ottawa. It's when you have opportunities to eat poutine, you eat poutine as a Canadian.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't really. I didn't consider how I was going to feel with a headset on. Honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. To expand on this, you recently had the opportunity to work in a motion sim. I know you've had some thoughts about sim drifting and how all that works ahead of time. Can you explain, I guess, like what that process was and maybe how your mindset's changed after being in that kind of setup?
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I really got it into my head. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you look at the results and the people who are at the top of the field right now, how important sim is. So I tried to set myself up, and I didn't have a ton of budget. So I got a wheel and pedals and the, Oculus and everything. And I just really struggled to set it up. And I hit a point where I was like, I can't even do donuts in this thing. I don't know if it's me, if it's the car. I'm not getting enough feedback from the system to know what's happening. And I got so frustrated that I kind of gave up on it. I was like, nah, I'll drive. I know when I'm driving that I'm actually doing something productive instead of practicing something that doesn't apply or doesn't work well. And so I had an opportunity to try these sims. And one is like a 6 hydraulic, it looks like a spider. I got to try that one, and I tried that on the road course first, and then tried this other VR sim that does like it has more like sliding, I guess is the way that I would put it. But for me, the thing I've always struggled with is it doesn't feel like a real car. These really felt like real cars. I had the feedback of the front end. Like for me, the biggest issue with driving in a sim is I would just like understeer into everything because I couldn't feel the point of losing traction of the front end. And I wasn't having that problem anymore. But what was crazy about the motion sim, which actually really like, it's like you're loading the car, you don't feel it. Like you're so used to what a car is supposed to feel like when it's moving that you don't feel it. And I like hit a K-rail at one point and was like fully flinching because it feels so real. I definitely want more time into it. I definitely think if there was any argument left to be made that sim drifting didn't help, I don't think that's the case at all. I think that a lot of drivers that didn't grow up with sim struggle to make the transition. But this for me felt like I could make the transition and quite quickly actually be in a productive phase of driving as opposed to what feels like wasting my time just trying to understand the thing or make it do what I want. It feels like driving a car.
Yeah, I think the hard part is that those rigs basically cost what a brand, like an actual car costs. Like that's the hard part.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing. And ultimately what's frustrating about that is you really do get back to the point of budget's not the only factor, but it is a big determining factor in how successful someone can be in this field. And that's definitely something that I don't think I was fully aware of coming into it.
Interesting.
If that makes sense. Like I knew that it cost money, obviously, and I basically sold my house and everything to pay for it, but I didn't realize how many other advantages there are, or like, being able to, if someone has the capacity of just being like, I want one of those things tomorrow, you think in 3 months they're not going to be better than someone that hasn't practiced because they couldn't afford the track time or the tires?
Yeah.
It's just
repetition.
I
think it goes as far too as things like hotels or good food or whatever, right? Like that's, a crew that's really tired because they didn't get a lot of sleep is not going to perform at the same level as a crew that's been up in the Marriott for an entire weekend. I think those are two very different situations. Not that one crew couldn't beat another one, but there's a massive advantage in a well-fed, well-rested crew.
Yeah, that's something I really struggled with. Like I am willing to take things away from myself and sleep in my trailer with a car or whatever, but I've never been able to do that to my crew because I feel that, I come from film. I know how hard people work and I know what kind of money people make to do that kind of hard work. And I am, generally speaking, expecting a same level of dedication and work ethic, but I'm not able to pay film money, and so the least I can do is make sure that my crew is comfortable, I really struggled actually the first year of FD. if my crew was working, I was there, and I was there helping. And eventually they'd have to be like, hey, you need to go home because the way that you serve the crew is that you drive. And therefore the driver needs to be rested. Like having to make decisions both as the team owner and as the driver can be really, really challenging. But yeah, it is important. I think that just crew morale, right? Like wherever you can. I don't know how people are able to expect their crew to make the kind of sacrifices that they have to make if they are not getting to sleep in a bed, for instance, on top of not getting paid or whatever else the conditions are. I mean, and the reality is FD isn't, the budgets are all over the place, right?
Yeah.
The spread is massive, but it is a factor in success. There are always the one-offs or that gritty story of like the underdog that really gets to a point well beyond what they maybe should be capable of with the tools that they have at their disposal. But it's not frequently repeatable, I don't think,
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. It can happen. It does happen. And that I think that chance, right, is what motivates so many people. Or, the story of Chelsea Denofa, who was self-funded and probably came very close to giving up and then, just puts himself out there and gets on the biggest team in drifting. Like things like that, I do think is what motivates a lot of people because they know there's a chance it could happen. But there's also a lot of drivers that, financially ruin themselves and drop out of the sport, which is also the reality.
Yeah.
But I think the reason why people stick with it is because in order to do well, you have to be a level of competitive that is unnatural and unhealthy. But that is what makes those people great. And if you look at the FD paddock, that is that is all people that are unnaturally and unhealthily competitive. And that's why they even got to that level, because the other people gave up, right?
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of attrition to it. But I heard someone say once, it has crossed my mind that maybe this is a really bad decision that I've made, and that I feel I'm so far down the path of destroying my own life that I have to see it through now because it's all gone anyway. But there was someone who said, yeah, I took a couple years off racing and then was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the money. And, someone said you always found it, right? You always find it when you make the commitment. And I do think that's true. It's a really hard way to live. But I think we're all like that. We love this thing so much, we'll sacrifice whatever it takes to have it or to just be around it. And yeah, ultimately the goal is to be successful, but only one person a weekend is having the weekend they wanted. Yeah.
I think you've got a unique situation just with your career path where I don't know how hard or easy it is to find work given your situation, but like if it comes down to it, you can be like, okay, cool, I'll go do I'll take the next 2-3 weeks and I'll just run a bunch of gigs and then, okay, that's going to get me through for the next little bit. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to drive and then see where we're at. And if I got to fly back to this place and do some work and that's how I lived for a long period of time. And I know there's many drivers that are in the exact same situation, just they're not pushing themselves through windows and lighting themselves on fire. So a little different.
Yeah, I definitely have the opportunity to go and do work that is kind of contractual work. The fun thing with stunts is it pretty much is inevitable that the job happens when you have a commitment. That's how we say, oh, you need to work, just book a vacation that's not refundable. That's when you'll get the call and it's going to happen on that day and that's not negotiable. And when I realized that I might have a problem is I started saying no to jobs because of drifting. Because of the events that I said that I would do. The commitment is really important to me and the driving is really important to me. And of course, last year, all of the film industry was on strike. So there wasn't really a ton of opportunity for that. And now, moving my own trailer around the country, trying to find opportunities to make changes to my car and test the car and have the seat time in the car, but balancing that out with the fact that I can only afford so many pairs of tires, it is definitely a balancing act. But could I quit entirely and go back to film and be happy? Possibly.
Yeah.
I don't think I will. But it's definitely an option.
I think all it's going to take is a small win, like we talked about. It could be, winning a certain battle or making it so far, and then you're like, I'm hooked again. That's it. Like all of those doubts. I've seen it with so many drivers.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's one small thing that happens, and I'm like, I'm back. That's it. We're in. We're all in. Let's go.
I mean, it's funny. I was saying this to Talk at the beginning of the season. I was testing the S14 right before Atlanta, and we made the call to pull the engine and swap the engine like a week before the car had to leave for Atlanta. My truck was like, I didn't have a way of even transporting it. And Taka is the one that towed my trailer across the country. And not only did he do that, he found someone to do the engine swap. He waited until, and we ended up swapping the engine twice, long story. But they made it happen. And I said to him, like, it's always just shy of impossible, and if it were just any more impossible, I'd give up, but it isn't. And then people step up to help you, and you're like, well, if they're willing to make this sacrifice for me, I have to see it through. I'm not going to be the one that quits. And I'm sure it's like that for a lot of people. Something happens. It's always achievable. It's just hard, but it's never hard. I feel like hard isn't a good enough reason to quit. If it was impossible, sure, then you have to like take the L. But it doesn't seem like that many things are actually impossible if you're creative.
Yeah, the creative is definitely necessary in that statement. I mean, even you coming up to the LZ World Tour, like that was 3 different trucks that had to figure out to get you there. Like
Man.
that was creative.
Well, and ultimately, you look at it from the outside and you're like, why did you try so hard? Like, why?
Yeah.
Why was it worth it? I mean, for a lot of reasons, for me, sentimentally, Mirabel was like the first place I ever drifted. But yeah, that I definitely had this moment of wondering if not only did I have bad luck, but if it was contagious, because, the people who were trying to help me were having like engine failures. Or no, the first guy, his transmission blew up in Philadelphia. The second guy, his truck immediately went into limp mode. Third guy made it happen, but it was like, wow, this is a lot of people sacrificing their time and things happening to them to make this happen for me.
But I mean, you made it.
I did make it. I did make it, and then I tried to flip my car, but
Yeah, kickflips are not a good thing to do in drifting.
No, but at least I've done it now, and I feel like part of the reason is Jen Horsey said to me that you're not a real race car driver if you haven't rolled your car. And I guess I took that a little statement. Personally, but Jen's a legend.
Funny. So I love Jen. She's somebody I very much want to have on the show soon, because I think just the information that she has and the behind the scenes that, like, unless you're within the kind of FD inner circle, you have no idea what she has done for the sport and the industry.
It's incredible. Jen is the kind of person where, like, I met Jen and was like, oh, this person seems rad, and then I Googled her, because if you don't Google everyone you meet, you are like missing out on a ton of information.
Yeah.
But I Googled her and I was like, who is this person? How do I not know she exists? Right? She's so inspiring. She's done so much, and she's just a really capable human being also. But yeah, I would love to hear the stories that she could tell on this show.
I've heard a few, so that's why I'm like, oh, I gotta get her on here. So it'll be good. I'm excited to tell more of the side stories, right? Like, it's great getting the drivers on. Don't get me wrong, like nothing against any of the pro or pro spec drivers, but like, there's so much that I've learned even this year from people that most people who are even big fans of FD have never heard of. And you're like, oh, this person is responsible for this, and this, like, and you had no idea.
That's part of the reason why I started the women's tour. Was there are all of these women already here doing these incredible things, making it happen, and no one is seeing them, and no women are seeing them, and knowing, oh, it's not like we need to bring women here. There are women here. If you want to be here, just show up. Just ask for a job. Yeah. Work towards it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, it'd be nice to have more and just not feel like anybody has to be intimidated, no matter who you are, to come into the sport. Like, that should never should be a barrier, right? Like just if you like this sport, just come in and work this sport. There's opportunity everywhere. You just have to know how to get in.
I mean, but I think that that's really what it boils down to, though, is how many people are even exposed to drifting, right?
Right.
If you don't even know what exists, and what's, I think, unique a little bit about drifting is a lot of the people that come into drifting don't have other motorsport experience, right? They see this thing at the track or they want to try it, and you don't have to get a race license. You just get a car and you show up and you can be driving, right? And so for me, like, drifting was really the first motorsport I was involved with. I don't know how other motorsports are structured. I didn't know what jobs were involved in it. I just loved going sideways in a car and then got a little carried away. But, so many people just don't know how to get there. Right, there's all of these other jobs that support this thing that I see, right? People just need to know what exists. I don't think that drifting in particular is hostile to women at all. I think they're very welcome. I've never had an issue where I went to the track, and I've made it a point to ask women as I've been traveling around the world who are into drifting, hey, have you ever experienced anything negative, like, because you're a woman? And I'm not asking because I'm looking for that story. I'm asking because I know that I'm going to get this answer, which is no, never. Everyone's been super supportive and helpful and welcoming. And I think that's so important for people to hear.
I'm wondering if that's just because of how new the sport is, that it never had some of the ingrained negative culture baked in, right? Because it's a modern sport, really, in the grand scheme of things. So, if we go back and say let's say 25 years old, right? Like that's not that long ago in the grand scheme of basically anything.
No, and that's very, I think, important to acknowledge that it hasn't always been the case. There's been lots of places where women were very aggressively kept out of sports. I mean, the Boston Marathon is like a crazy example of that, where you're like, wow, did people need to get so angry about a woman running that they had to attack her? It's incredible. But that isn't what we're dealing with now at all. No,
it's great that it's not even something. I mean, obviously we want to be aware of it and think of it, but it's not something that's ever crossed my mind. Maybe that's just coming from my perspective, where it's like, I don't ever look at anybody in the paddock and be like, oh, why are they here? Like, that's never something I've had to deal with. I mean, there's other situations I've been in where you're like, oh, that's interesting. But in drifting, it's so open, just generally. The wealth, like the share of information, the share of cultures, everything. It's like, that's maybe why I've fallen in love with it so much. Like, it very much feels like as much as there's judging, a very judgment-free area.
And it feels like a family, and I thought that would be different when I got to FD specifically. I mean, I have drifted in so many places, and, of course, the first couple of times you show up to a new track and you're like, oh, I'm just here with my car and I don't know anybody. It feels weird. But then you realize that you don't technically know these people, but they're not that different from the people anywhere else, and we all sort of love the same thing and have the same attitude. And coming into FD, I was so nervous and so like, okay, well, the rules are like this, and Kevin wants all these things, and okay, don't make Andy Luck mad, and like, I had all these like ideas, and it is big and it is overwhelming, and simultaneously there is no being prepared for FD, no matter how much you do anywhere else, and it's so small, like it is so intimate, and the people that I've had the opportunity to connect with over just the time that I've been involved in it, and the support that I've had, and like where that support has come from, has been incredible. And especially the organization itself of like FD wanting to support drivers and understanding that is a mutual relationship, right? As drivers, our success is the series success, and vice versa, right? One can't exist independent of the other.
Yeah, you can't have a series without anybody competing in it. I mean, doesn't last very long.
But not only that, like if the drivers aren't interesting, right? If the fans don't engage with the drivers, they will engage less with the series. If they're not emotionally invested, they're not going to be as dedicated. They're not going to spend the money. They're not going to show up. They're not going to watch the live stream. And ultimately, that's how we sustain this thing, right? Is engagement.
Yeah, and that's selfishly, like that's one of the biggest reasons why I love doing this show, is like I want to be able to tell more stories and introduce people. Like I have the opportunity to speak to so many drivers on a very, very personal level outside of this show. And it's just like, man, like I just want to do the same thing again, but like have everybody do it. Like if there was a way that I could live stream without being intrusive, like the Saturday night during Teardown is some of the most like fun and stimulating conversations and ridiculous shit. And like it feels very much like almost like a high school party is kind of the best way I can put it, where you're like, you know, you're just hanging out. Everybody's chilling. Like you're moving around from little groups and cliques of people, and you're gossiping, and you're getting into the drama of everything going on and who's mad at this person. And then like you get to the next round, you're like, it's fine. We're all good. Like that Saturday night Teardown is so much fun. And I don't know how, I don't think there's any way to deliver that to the masses. And I don't know if I even want to, because it's such a unique feeling.
It is tough because I feel like even if you just were like, here, you know, like.
No, as soon as there's a mic, it's different, right?
Yeah.
It's as soon as somebody has to acknowledge the fact that this is being recorded and broadcast and on the internet forever, it's very different. And even with this show, like there's still the elephant in the room. There's two of them, and they're the microphones that are in front of you. Like you still have to be aware of the fact that you're being recorded doing the show, but you try to get past that fourth wall, right? Like you try to move past it in the conversation, but you still realize that there is an audience from time to time, right? Like good acting, like you still have to remember there's a camera there. And even though you're in a situation, like the actors that are the best, the people that forget that there's an entire crew and staff and cameras and development around it and are just within the moment. And that's the best acting you're going to have. And you can tell when they're not in that place.
Man, I've had situations on set. I mean, we're all very good at like avoiding eye contact when acting is happening, but I've had moments on set with cast acting where I'm like really emotionally moved, and I'm there. I know that like they're going to call cut. Everyone is going to turn back into who they are, and it's incredible the emotion that people can convey, and the presence they can bring to a situation that is so full of all of these awkward elements. And don't forget that you need to be standing on this mark when you cry. And then when you cry, don't forget, then look here, then you have to, it's all rehearsed, but so organic. It's an incredible ability.
Yeah. I mean, the most I ever did was a lot of improv in like high school. I was definitely the weird improv kid, but that's very different because that's completely within your own brain. There's no one telling you where you have to go and what you have to do. Yeah. But I don't, it's very easy to look at actors and be like, oh yeah, it must be nice. And it's like, I don't think it is. I really don't think the life's as great as you think it is.
It's, if I can communicate one thing, it's not, because everybody wants something from you all the time. Like their job is to be charming, right? And if they let that slip for a second because they're super stressed out, they have 6 pages of dialogue, a sex scene, whatever it is, their mom is dying scene, whatever it is, someone always wants to talk to you, has to talk to you about something. And if that actor for a moment, like, just needs their space, well, then they get a reputation of being an asshole or difficult to work with. And it's hard. And they have to actually feel those emotions in order to emote them. So you add that layer on top of all of it. It is complicated, but I always kind of remind people, like, it's their job to be charming. They have to be that way. And I usually give them space.
Yeah, being on is exhausting. Like it's very, very tiring. Just even within my own little space, like a day of FDM might be just sitting there yelling into a microphone, but I am wrecked at the end of it. Like I am useless. Like unless I catch a second wind, which sometimes happens, but most of the time, like we're getting out of the booth and I'm like just dog-eyed because I'm trying to put everything into what I'm doing. And then, getting out of there, I want to also make sure that if anybody wants to talk to me, I'm as enthusiastic as I can be, because they are, right? Yeah. Like they're super pumped. There's everything going on and I need to match that energy. But there are days I get back to the hotel room and I'm like, I'm not looking at my phone. No one call me.
Don't talk to me.
And that's such a small version of what somebody has to do on a much higher level. Yeah. It's not easy. I'm sure you get the same exhaustion though.
I do, and it's been an interesting transition for me because I've always, with stunts, I always felt like if you do your job right, no one knows you were there. There's a level of anonymity, like we're not there for the attention, and going into a world of like autograph signings and podcasts and all of these things, it's like it is different, you know, and it's cool to be a part of something that people love so much. And it definitely also pushes on this, like, I don't feel worthy of any of this, you know?
The imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I want everyone to have the opportunity to like sit in the race car and, you know, see race car drivers and whatever. The autograph signing thing is such a weird, it's a weird environment, right? It doesn't, I actually really love interacting with people a little bit one-on-one, and it doesn't necessarily provide the perfect context for that because there's so many people all the time. And I will say, like, I like talking to people. I'm not good at the like 15-second conversation part. Some of the drivers are really good. Rome's really good at it. Margaritas is really good at it. You know, they find a way to engage with people and ask them questions. And I would like to be better at that because I do think it's important.
Yeah, Rome is like one of the best at like crowd work, I think is the way I can put it. Like whenever you're talking to him, it's like you're the only person in the world. You know, he's so engaged with whatever conversation. And like, at first I was like, oh, like, cause we're like buddies and I've seen him do it with other people. I'm like, oh, I thought we had something special. But then it's like, but it's also like, that's how good he is, that he makes everybody feel like that.
Well, you know, he's a motivational speaker, right?
Oh, I know. But like,
I didn't.
I want to
think
feel
that's
special
crazy.
here. Yeah, I get it though, because that dude's been through some crazy times, and like, you know, he's not that he's optimistic, but like super realistic about it. Like he's never like, you know, everything's gold. It's like, oh, I like there's some tarnish here, but it's still shiny.
I really admire people that can go through the world not cynically. I'm not naturally wired for that. I think sarcasm is a heavy coping mechanism for me. But I think those people are necessary, you know, and that really kind of seeing things in the best way possible or having that upbeat attitude, it really trickles down to everyone around you.
Yeah. Yeah. The positive mindset is good, but having to ground that in reality is the hard part. So that balance is not easy, but necessary.
I've generally practiced the how hard could it be, and then reality hits, but it's too late because I've already committed to doing the thing. That's my technique.
Is that an upbringing thing? Like where does that root in? That's a great question. I've just always been that way. You know, I like the idea of the adventure, you know, that's why, how hard could it be to renovate a triplex completely? It sucks, you know, through the Montreal winter. That's awful. But, you know, I more just think about the fun parts, and that's what gets me to commit. And then I'm too much of a like see it through person to ever abandon whatever journey I started on. I don't know where it comes from, but it gets me in a lot of interesting situations, and it gets me, you know, I have the ability to say, oh, I did all of these things, but when I look back at it, sometimes I'm like, wow, I chose a lot of suffering on purpose. It's all my own fault. Yeah. I mean, I don't know your family, but like just doing the small bits of research, it seems like they're very open to allowing you to explore your own life very, very early. I mean, you're finding out your mom was an herbalist was like one of the coolest things. Because I was like looking through, I'm like, oh man, like I have so many questions. Now I want to meet your mom because I have so many questions.
My mom was an
having an
herbalist
upbringing
and an astrologer.
Oh, go ahead. Okay.
So you definitely want to meet my mom. It's hilarious.
But having an upbringing like that is conducive to doing a lot of really cool things. Like if your parents are not open-minded, you might still go do those cool things, but you do that out of spite, not out of opportunity.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting balance because they don't understand anything about what I'm doing. You know, I think I sent my mom a video, and I want to say it was like this year or last year, and she was like, oh, is that what you do? Like, yeah. And I've been doing it for like a decade, and I'm, you know, doing it at one of the highest levels there is. But yeah, no one ever said, oh, no, you can't do that, or girls can't do that, or that's going to be, like, they just kind of let me explore whatever it was and did their best to support me the way that they could. And I actually do credit that a lot with all of the chances that I've taken because, yeah, no one ever told me that someone like me couldn't do that, no matter what it was. Yeah,
it gives you that freedom, like without boundaries, right? Without any mental blocks of like, I can't do this. Like, you have no reason not to do it.
Oh, yes. Without boundaries, everything is perfect, right?
Yeah. Well, until you find the boundaries really, really hard.
I struggle a lot with with not being able to do certain things if I want to. But it is freeing to just go, well, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to try it. What's the worst that could happen? I mean, I don't generally focus on what the worst that could happen is, which is why I get into those situations. But yeah, it was definitely an advantage to not have an external voice telling me what wasn't possible or telling me to be realistic. You know, when I wanted to be a circus performer, they were like, okay, do that, you know?
Yeah, that upbringing is very, like I said, very conducive to what I feel like is your lifestyle. I mean, you could have gone in so many different directions, but I also have a very open mother who was like, whatever we wanted to do. She's like, yeah, I'll support you. We'll just do the thing. So, which similar allowed for some really cool things and some really crazy things.
Yeah, I think the piece that I lacked that I had to develop over time was like discipline, you know? And I developed that through external sources and people like Taka and relationships that I was in with people that did really see things through, you know? I was really good. For a long time, I was the like, oh, I want to try that. Ooh, well, now this new thing is fun. Like, that's why I can do so many different things because I got an amount of dopamine from trying a thing. I did that. And then I like hit the point of like, oh, you actually have to work. Now, like your natural ability to acquire skill has hit its plateau and this is the work phase. Yeah. And I'd be like, oh, hey, I can try this other thing that I'm okay at now. And that'll be fun for a while. But drifting was the one where really I already had this idea of my capacity as a driver. And when I was faced with the reality not matching my self-assessment, I was already too far in to be like, well, I'll just try something else. I was like, no, I already identify as someone who drives, which means that now I have to work through this. Now I have to get to this other place.
Well, I mean, I hope that carries you, really. Like, that's what the difference is. Like, your natural ability has gotten you so far, and now I agree. You're very much at the work phase where it's like, okay, I need to put this all down. This has gotten me so far. Now it's the effort. But like I said, those small wins. It'll be one small thing. Maybe, with New Jersey coming up, it'll be one thing that happens and like, shit, we're doubling it down again. Like, here we go.
I mean, I hope so. I mean, the reality is I haven't had the means to train the way that I have in previous years. And I wish that were different. And I hope that I can get into a situation where I do have regular access to a sim because I do really see the advantage of that, and that's really what it comes down to. If you can't afford to practice, there is an element that is just seed time. Some people will take more, some people will take less to pick up on those things, but the access to practice and practice in general is always going to build your foundational skills because I believe quite firmly that when we're under pressure or things aren't going well, we revert to our highest level of full mastery, right? Not the things we can do when everything is good, but the things that are like second nature that we don't even have to think about. And that's the part that you need to grow.
Bringing it all back to stunts where you need the person who can do a double backflip, to do a single backflip, right? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, anything else you want to cover? I mean, this is good. This went very deep. Like, I did not expect it to go as deep as it did. No, it's great. I think it's really good.
I mean, I'm a little bit that person. No, I mean, I guess the thing for me that I really want to highlight and like say that I'm grateful for is the way that this community and the FD community has really like embraced me and supported me. And that is the organizers, that is you, like what you said to me in Atlanta really stuck with me because I was not feeling, you probably don't even remember.
No, I don't.
So I was like just feeling really hard on myself. I had a terrible time in Atlanta. I didn't have the time in the car that I wanted. I made a mistake. I crashed the car and I was like, man, I wanted to come out and show a certain way. I really felt like it was important for me as a woman, as a Canadian, like show up and feel like I was showing why I was there and not just making mistakes and sucking, which is what I felt that I had done. And you were like, yeah, nobody remembers Matt or Frederick's first seasons.
That sounds like something I would say.
And I was like, okay, all right, yeah, that's fair. I guess hopefully I'll get a season 2. But that meant a lot to me, and it made me go, right, this is a journey. I had this idea that the journey was getting here. No, now there's like they're separate journeys. This journey is kind of just beginning. But I've had the opportunity to like train with Rad Dan, to work with Matt pretty intimately. I went over earlier in the season to Sweden when Frederick and his friends were all there, and like having those opportunities and having those people kind of open. People like, I just watched a part of the clips about Lorette and talking about the way that people welcomed her in and supported her, and it really is like that, it really is this small community. And I'm just really grateful to it. Like it's a place I really want to stay, and a place that I want to help grow too and be a part of. I want to give back because there's something really special here.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we're happy to have you. I'm very excited to see when these victories start coming across. Hopefully I was completely wrong about the tokens and you can find a few more luck tokens.
I'm going to go digging tonight.
There you go. Yeah, digging for some luck tokens. Maybe it's karma. I don't know what it is, but I think it's on the horizon, and I'm excited to get to spectate it. So, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we got to get this all sorted and stuff. Trying to get you nailed down because you're such a nomad is not easy, but it was a lot of fun.
Thanks for making it work.
For anybody listening or watching, thank you so much. I'll leave all the Zeee stuff down in the podcast description, and catch everybody in New Jersey.
See you soon.